Tonight, we're not here to fix anything, not to understand everything, not to become someone better before you're allowed to rest. This is a quiet space where we gently let go and return to inner peace through soft Zen stories inspired by the Buddha, shared slowly so your mind can soften and your body can rest. Maybe today asked a little too much from you. Too many thoughts, too many worries, too many small things you tried to hold together. And maybe, just for this moment, you're ready to set them down. Here, you don't need to improve yourself. You don't need to solve tomorrow. You are already enough simply by being here, breathing quietly. Just for a moment. Where are you listening from tonight? Wherever you are, I'm grateful you're here, sharing this quiet space. Let your breath slow as if it remembers the way home. Let your shoulders soften like they no longer need to carry the world. Tonight, we'll listen to a simple story. A story from ordinary life, carrying a small thread of Zen and Buddhist wisdom. Not to give you more to think about, but to help you loosen your grip. Because suffering rarely ends by force. It softens when we stop holding it so tightly. There's nothing to rush, nothing to achieve, only a gentle drifting into rest, into stillness. Whether you stay awake or slowly fall asleep, this moment is already enough. And now, we begin tonight's journey with these Zen stories. Jason didn't tell anyone he was thinking about quitting. Not because he was ashamed exactly. More because he didn't have the energy for the conversations that would follow. The encouragement, the advice, the well-meaning questions that sounded like pressure. He could already hear the phrases people used when they wanted to help. Don't give up. You're almost there. Just push through. He was 23 at community college, trying to finish a program he'd picked because it sounded practical. Something stable. Something that would make his mom relax when she asked for the 5th time in a week how school was going. That night, he sat on the edge of his bed in a small apartment he shared with 2 roommates who were both out late. The place was quiet in a lived-in way. A faint hum from the refrigerator, the soft whoosh of the ceiling fan, the occasional pop of the heater turning on and off. His desk lamp was on, angled downward, so the rest of the room stayed dim. In front of him was a stack of papers, a course withdrawal form, a printout of his grades, and an email from the financial aid office he hadn't opened yet. The papers weren't dramatic, but they carried weight. The kind of weight that sat in your throat. Jason picked up the withdrawal form and read the lines again, even though he already knew what it said. Name, student ID, class, signature, date. It was strange how something that could change your life could look so ordinary on paper. He put it down and reached for his phone, then stopped. He wasn't looking for distraction. He was looking for relief. But the kind of relief he usually reached for scrolling, checking, refreshing, didn't actually relieve anything. It just delayed the moment when he had to feel what he was feeling. Jason leaned back against the wall and let his head rest there. His eyes stayed open, unfocused on the dark corner of the room. He wasn't scared of failure in a loud way. He wasn't panicking. What he felt was quieter and heavier. The fear that he was stuck, that nothing in him was changing, that he'd keep trying and keep feeling like the same anxious, uncertain person who didn't know what he was doing. He'd been telling himself for months that he just needed to work harder, sleep less, focus more, be tougher. But lately, the harder he pushed, the worse he felt. Not just tired thin, like something in him was wearing down. His shoulders ached from sitting tense all day. His jaw felt tight. Even his hands resting on his knees had a slight tremble to them, like they didn't trust stillness. Jason stared at the papers again. The thought that kept returning wasn't, "I want to quit." It was, "I don't want to hurt like this anymore." And that difference mattered, even if he couldn't explain it yet. He got up and walked to the tiny kitchen. The floor was cold under his feet. He poured a glass of water and took a slow drink. The water tasted plain, almost sweet, in how uncomplicated it was. He stood there a moment, listening to the refrigerator hum. A steady sound, not asking anything from him. On the counter was a grocery store flyer one of his roommates had left behind. Most of it was ads. But on the back, there was a small picture of a butterfly, part of a spring gardening section. Jason didn't care about gardening. Still, his eyes paused there. A butterfly. Bright wings. Lightness. He thought randomly of how a caterpillar becomes one. Not the pretty part, the slow part. The part people didn't post, the part where it disappears into something tight and sealed and confusing. It wasn't a neat transformation. It was a messy one, a dissolving. Jason had seen a video once in a biology class he barely remembered of a caterpillar turning into a chrysalis. He'd expected it to look like a simple upgrade, like a costume change. Instead, it looked like an ending, like the caterpillar was giving up its shape, like it was surrendering to something it didn't understand. And then later, something new came out. Jason set the glass down and went back to his room. He didn't feel inspired. He didn't suddenly know what to do. But the image stayed with him, not the butterfly, but the chrysalis, the in-between place. Maybe that was where he was. Not failing, not succeeding, just changing. He sat down again, the withdrawal form still on the bed beside him. His fingers hovered over the paper. He didn't sign. He didn't tear it up either. He simply let it be there without forcing a decision out of himself. The ceiling fan moved the air in a slow circle, over and over, like time doing what time does. Jason exhaled longer than he meant to. The tightness in his chest softened a little, not because his problems were solved, but because he'd stopped squeezing himself for an answer. Sometimes the pain isn't punishment. Sometimes it's the skin getting too small. He didn't need to call it growth. He didn't need to call it transformation. He only needed to admit the truth of it. The old way he'd been living didn't fit anymore. And maybe the next thing wouldn't arrive through force. Maybe it would arrive through letting something end. He lay back on the bed, still fully dressed, and let his eyes close for a moment. The room stayed quiet. The papers stayed where they were. The future stayed outside the door waiting its turn. For now, Jason was allowed to be in the in-between. Jason woke sometime later, not fully asleep, not fully awake. The room was darker now. The desk lamp had clicked itself off, and the only light came from the thin strip under the door where the hallway glowed faintly. The ceiling fan still turned slow and patient, moving the same air it had been moving all night. For a few seconds, he didn't remember what time it was or what day it was. That small disorientation felt almost kind. There was no label yet, no role to step back into. His body felt heavy, but not in the exhausted way he'd grown used to. This heaviness was softer, like something settling rather than collapsing. His shoulders weren't pressed up around his ears anymore. His jaw wasn't clenched. Jason lay there and noticed his breathing. It came and went on its own without instruction. When he stopped trying to manage it, it slowed. When it slowed, his thoughts thinned out. The papers were still on the bed beside him. He could see their edges in the low light. They didn't look threatening now, they just looked unfinished. He rolled onto his side and pulled the blanket up around his shoulders. The fabric was warm, familiar. He hadn't changed clothes, but it didn't matter. Comfort didn't require preparation tonight. The image of the chrysalis returned quietly, not as an idea, not as a metaphor he needed to analyze, but as a feeling, tight, enclosed, still. Inside a chrysalis, he remembered the caterpillar doesn't simply wait. Its old body breaks down. The structures that once made sense dissolve. What emerges later isn't a repaired version of the same thing. It's something different. That part had always unsettled him. Jason had been trying to carry his old shape forward. The same expectations, the same measures of success, the same timeline everyone seemed to agree on. No wonder it hurt. No wonder he felt like he was failing at a version of life that no longer fit. Fear had told him that stopping meant falling behind, that letting something end meant losing everything. But lying there in the quiet, he could feel another truth beneath that fear. Not all endings were losses. Some were releases. He didn't need to decide tonight whether he would stay in the program or leave it. He didn't need to map out a new identity. He didn't need to become the butterfly before the night was over. The work of this moment was smaller. It was staying still long enough for the struggle to stop thrashing. Jason rested one hand on his chest and felt the warmth there. A steady presence. Proof that something in him was still working, still alive, still responding to care. Outside, a car passed somewhere on the street, tires hissing softly against the pavement. The sound came and went without leaving a trace. The world kept moving without requiring his participation. That was a relief. He let his thoughts drift without grabbing onto them. School, work, his mom's worried face. None of them needed his attention right now. They could wait outside the cocoon of this night. Change didn't feel like excitement. It felt like quiet, like not having to explain himself to anyone, even to himself. Jason's breathing grew slower. His body sank deeper into the mattress. The boundary between thought and rest softened like the edges of a picture losing focus. The caterpillar didn't rush its becoming. It didn't argue with the process. It didn't demand proof that something better was coming. It simply allowed the old form to end. Jason felt his eyelids grow heavy again. This time he didn't resist it. He didn't try to stay alert. He didn't tell himself to sleep. He just let go of the need to be anything other than what he was in this moment. Not finished, not broken, just changing. The night held him without questions. The room stayed dark and steady. Somewhere inside the quiet, something new was already forming, unseen, unhurried, exactly on time. The light turned slowly, whether anyone was watching or not. From the edge of the station grounds, Noah could see it sweep across the dark water, pause for a fraction of a second, then move on again. The rhythm never changed. It didn't hurry. It didn't hesitate. It simply did what it had always done. Noah was 33, a firefighter used to alarms and urgency, and the kind of situations where standing still meant something had gone wrong. But tonight there were no calls coming in. The station was quiet in that rare, held-breath way that only happened late at night. He sat on the lower bunk, boots lying neatly on the floor, turnout jacket folded over the back of a chair. His wedding ring rested between his fingers. He turned it once, then again, a habit he'd picked up without noticing. Outside, the lighthouse kept its slow rotation. Noah hadn't planned to think about anything heavy tonight. He hadn't planned to think at all. But stillness had a way of making space, and space had a way of letting things drift in. Earlier that week, he'd stood in a hospital hallway, waiting for news that hadn't arrived on schedule. He'd been trained to respond to emergencies, to move toward danger, to do something. Standing there, unable to act, had felt strangely harder than running into smoke. Fear didn't always feel like panic to him. Sometimes it felt like vigilance that couldn't switch off. A body that stayed ready even when there was nothing left to prepare for. The lighthouse beam slid across the water again, catching the surface just long enough to reveal movement waves rising, collapsing, rearranging themselves endlessly. The light didn't stop the waves. It didn't calm the water. It didn't control the storm systems far out at sea. It just stood. Noah leaned back against the wall and let his shoulders rest there. The building was solid, familiar. He could hear a faint hum from the generator, the quiet shuffle of someone moving in the hallway upstairs. Ordinary sounds, reassuring ones. He remembered visiting this coastline years ago, long before he wore this uniform. He'd stood much closer to the lighthouse than close enough to feel the vibration of its machinery through the ground. Back then, he'd assumed the light existed to save ships, to guide them perfectly to shore. Now he knew better. The lighthouse didn't guide ships home. It didn't promise safety. It simply marked a point. Something steady to orient around when everything else was moving. Noah rolled the ring between his fingers and slipped it back onto his hand. The metal felt cool, then warm as it settled. He didn't think about the future in detail. He didn't replay worst-case scenarios. He'd done enough of that already. Instead, he let his eyes rest on the light as it moved again and again. Fear liked to whisper that he had to hold everything together, that if he relaxed his attention even briefly, something terrible would happen. That responsibility meant constant tension. But the lighthouse wasn't tense. It didn't brace itself against the wind. It didn't strain to shine brighter when the sea grew rough. It trusted its structure, its foundation. The simple truth that being present was enough. Noah felt his breathing slow as he watched. In through his nose, out through his mouth. He didn't regulate it. He didn't correct it. He just noticed it happening. There would be storms again. He knew that. There would be calls in the middle of the night, moments that demanded everything he had. But tonight wasn't one of them. Tonight asked for something different. It asked him to stop scanning the horizon for danger and let the dark be dark. To allow uncertainty to exist without filling it with fear. The lighthouse beam swept past once more, steady and patient. Noah closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. The light was still there. The water was still moving. Nothing had fallen apart in the moments he'd rested. Sometimes strength isn't about bracing yourself. Sometimes it's about staying where you are and letting the storm move around you. Noah stayed seated, grounded by the weight of his body, the quiet of the station, the dependable turn of the light. He didn't need to do anything else. Not yet. The night deepened without announcing itself. Noah noticed it, not by the clock, but by the way the station settled into a heavier quiet. Footsteps upstairs faded. A door closed softly. Somewhere a kettle clicked off after boiling and was forgotten. The ordinary sounds of people winding down, trusting the building to hold the rest. Outside the lighthouse continued its slow turning. The beam crossed the water, disappeared, then returned again, unchanged. It didn't react to the dark. It didn't measure it. Noah lay back on his bunk, hands folded loosely on his stomach. The mattress was firm, practical, the kind designed to support a body that might need to move quickly. Tonight, it only needed to support stillness. His thoughts drifted toward the things he couldn't control. Health, timing, outcomes. The kind of things that didn't respond to training or effort. He noticed the familiar urge to prepare, to imagine scenarios, to brace for impact. Then he noticed something else. The lighthouse didn't brace. It didn't tense its structure when the wind picked up. It didn't adjust its pace based on the sea's mood. It stayed rooted, not because it was resisting the storm, but because it was built for change. That difference mattered. Noah exhaled slowly. The ring on his finger caught a trace of light as the beam passed, then slipped back into shadow. He let his hand relax, fingers uncurling naturally. There was a quiet permission in realizing that vigilance wasn't the same as care. That being alert all the time didn't actually protect the people he loved. It only wore him down. Care could be steady without being tight. Outside, the water shifted again, waves reshaping themselves in the dark. The lighthouse didn't follow them. It didn't try to correct their movement. It simply offered a point of reference, something constant in a field of motion. Noah felt the same kind of reference point inside his body now. The weight of the mattress, the rhythm of his breath, the sense of being here now without needing to manage the next hour. He thought about the future less specifically. It lost its sharp edges, becoming more like a wide open space than a list of threats. Uncertainty didn't disappear. It just stopped feeling personal. The station hummed softly around him. Pipes shifted. The building breathed in its own way. All of it functioned without his supervision. Noah closed his eyes and let the darkness remain. It didn't feel empty. It felt full of movement he didn't need to track. The lighthouse beam passed again, unseen this time, but still there. He didn't need to see it to trust it. There was a kind of strength in that, in knowing that steadiness didn't require constant attention. That support didn't vanish just because you stopped watching it. Noah's breathing slowed further. His body softened against the mattress. The tension he carried as a second skin loosened layer by layer. Storms would come and go, waves would rise and fall. Some nights would ask more of him than others, but not this one. Tonight was allowed to be simple. The lighthouse would keep turning. The sea would keep moving, and he could rest inside that rhythm without holding it together. As sleep approached, Noah felt something settle, not certainty, but trust. Trust that being present was enough. Trust that he didn't need to shine brighter or stand taller to be useful. The light did not compete with the dark, it simply remained. And in that quiet, unwavering presence, Noah let himself be held by the night, knowing that when morning came, the world would still be there, changed perhaps, but steady enough to meet him. Ava's keycard failed the first time. She stood in the hotel hallway, suitcase beside her, and tried again. Same soft red blink. For a second, she just stared at it, not angry, not panicked, just tired in a very specific way. The kind of tired that makes small problems feel like proof that the whole world is slightly misaligned. She took a breath, adjusted the card, and swiped one more time. Green light. A quiet click. The door opened. Inside, the room was cool and dim with that steady hotel air conditioning hum that never fully disappears. Ava rolled her small suitcase over the carpet, closed the door behind her, and leaned her forehead against it for a moment, not because she was falling apart, just because her body needed something to hold on to before she moved again. She was 29, a flight attendant, someone who spent her days in motion, but her nights in places that didn't feel like hers. Different cities, same beige walls, different beds, same unfamiliar pillows. Travel looked glamorous from the outside, but most of it felt like living between commas. Ava set her uniform jacket on the chair, then slipped off her shoes. Her feet ached in that dull, patient way that didn't demand attention, but never stopped asking for it either. She walked to the window and pulled the curtain back a few inches. Outside, the city glowed. Not bright, not lively, just lit enough to remind her that life was still happening somewhere else. Tiny headlights moved along distant streets like slow beads on a string. She could have called someone. She could have texted. But conversations at this hour often required more energy than she had. Plus, she wasn't sure what she'd even say. "I'm fine, I'm just tired. I don't know what I'm doing." All of them were true in different proportions. Ava walked back to the bed and sat down carefully, as if the mattress belonged to someone else, and she was borrowing it. On the nightstand, there was a small lamp with a warm bulb. She reached over and turned it on. The light didn't fill the whole room. It didn't touch the corners. It didn't change the world outside the window. It simply made a small circle of safety around the bed and the nightstand, and her hands resting in her lap. Ava stared at that circle and felt something in her chest loosen. That's what a torch was, she realized. Not a sunrise, not a stadium light, not the kind of brightness that erased shadows, just enough light to take one step without guessing. Her mind had been doing the opposite lately, trying to light up the whole future at once, trying to see every possible outcome so she wouldn't be surprised, trying to map her life like a flight plan where every minute was accounted for. But life wasn't a flight plan. It was more like this hotel room. At midnight, unfamiliar, quiet, and impossible to see all at once. She opened her phone and scrolled through tomorrow's schedule. Same routine, same gates, same announcements. But underneath that was a deeper uncertainty she didn't have language for yet. She wasn't scared of one specific thing. She was scared of the open-endedness. The sense that her life could turn in any direction without warning. That she could wake up one day and realize she'd been moving for years without arriving anywhere. Ava set her phone face down on the nightstand. The gesture was small, but it changed the air in the room. Like lowering the volume on something that had been buzzing too close to her ear. She watched the lamp glow. Warm, steady, unconcerned. The light didn't demand that she fix her life tonight. It didn't insist she make big decisions. It didn't ask her to solve the question of who she was becoming. It just offered presence. Ava lay back on the bed, still in her travel clothes, hands resting on her stomach. The AC hummed. Somewhere down the hall, an elevator chimed softly and then went quiet again. She thought about all the moments in her life when she'd wanted certainty before moving forward. The way she'd postponed decisions until she felt ready, as if readiness would arrive like a package with her name on it. But maybe that wasn't how it worked. Maybe the night didn't offer a full map. Maybe it only offered the next few feet. Ava closed her eyes. The circle of light behind her eyelids was still there, warm and calm. She didn't try to force sleep. She didn't try to force clarity. She simply let the small light be enough. Because sometimes making it through the night isn't about seeing the whole path. Sometimes it's about trusting that one small circle of light can carry you from one breath to the next. At some point, the room felt less unfamiliar. Not because anything had changed, but because Ava had stopped scanning it. The edges softened once she let them stay in shadow. The lamp kept its small, steady circle. The rest of the space could be what it was. She shifted onto her side and pulled the blanket up over her shoulder. The fabric smelled faintly of detergent, clean and impersonal, but it was warm enough. Her breathing slowed without instruction. When she stopped checking it, it found its own pace. The city outside continued its quiet movements. A distant siren passed and faded. A truck downshifted somewhere far below. None of it asked for her attention. None of it needed interpretation. Ava noticed how uncertainty often tried to rush her. It wanted answers now, decisions now, proof now, as if the dark were a problem to solve rather than a condition to move through. The torch didn't solve the dark. it just made room inside it. She pictured herself walking a trail at night, the kind she'd taken as a kid on summer camping trips. You didn't swing the flashlight wildly. You didn't point it at the sky. You aimed it at the ground, right where your foot would land next. Step by step. That was enough to keep moving without fear. The lamp beside her hummed softly. It didn't flicker. It didn't try to be brighter than it was. It simply stayed on. Ava felt the urge to check her phone again, the reflex to reach for certainty, for updates, for something solid to hold on to. The urge passed when she didn't follow it, like a wave that lost its shape once it reached the shore. She rested one hand on her stomach and felt it rise and fall. The motion was small, reliable, proof that something in her knew how to keep going without a plan. There would be other hotel rooms, other nights that felt like this. There would be mornings where clarity still hadn't arrived and she'd have to move anyway. But clarity didn't need to arrive before rest. Rest came first. The lamp's light warmed the side of her face. Shadows shifted slightly as the air conditioning cycled. Nothing dramatic happened. That was the point. Fear liked drama. It liked big images and worst-case scenes. It liked convincing her that if she couldn't see everything, she was unsafe. But lying there now, Ava could feel the difference between darkness and danger. Darkness was simply what existed beyond the circle of light. It wasn't chasing her. It wasn't closing in. It was just there. She turned the lamp off, not abruptly, but with intention. The room went dark, though not completely. The city glow still found its way through the curtains. Enough to know where she was, enough to feel oriented. The torch didn't disappear when the light went out. It had done its job. Ava let her thoughts thin out. They arrived less as sentences and more as impressions, warmth, quiet the memory of movement slowing down. The future felt farther away now, not because it had been resolved, but because it no longer needed her attention. She didn't tell herself she was brave. She didn't tell herself she was ready. She simply allowed herself to be where she was without reaching ahead. The night held its shape around her. The bed supported her weight. The room remained steady. Somewhere the city continued to glow without asking her to participate. If the path ahead couldn't be seen all at once, that was okay. She didn't need the whole night lit up. One small light had been enough. Now even that could rest. And as sleep moved closer, Ava let herself drift into it, trusting that when morning came, the next circle of light would appear right where she needed it, not sooner, not farther away, just in time. There are days when Ava doesn't realize she's been holding her breath until her body starts to feel tired, not holding her breath in the literal way, like underwater, but the everyday kind of holding belly, slightly tight chest, a little constricted shoulders, subtly lifted as if relaxing would cause everything to slip out of her hands. It's a small, quiet reflex, but when it lasts long enough, it turns into a kind of exhaustion that's hard to name. Ava is 29, a flight attendant. She's used to holding herself just right for hours at a time, a smile that's warm, but not too much, a voice that's calm, steps that are light and steady. On the plane, Everything follows a procedure. And in her mind, everything does too. It just never shuts off. After each flight, when she gets back to her hotel room, she expects to feel lighter. But many nights, it feels like she's still standing in the cabin, still scanning, still on, even when no one is calling her name. That night, Ava checks in late. The hotel door closes behind her, and the room greets her with a familiar sound, the steady hum of the air conditioner, a thin layer of white noise covering everything. The bedside lamp is dim. The carpet softens her steps. Nothing is wrong. Everything looks like dozens of other rooms she's stayed in. And yet when she sets her suitcase down, her shoulders refuse to drop. She opens the suitcase, takes out her sleepwear, hangs her uniform in the closet. Each movement is neat and efficient, practiced into habit. But when everything is put away, when the suitcase is closed, when the key card is placed on the table, Ava notices something simple. She still hasn't let out a full breath. She sits on the edge of the bed. The mattress dips slightly softer than she expected. She rests her hands on her thighs and looks down at her fingers. Her nails are painted a light color, chipped a little on her thumb. A small, unimportant detail, but enough to bring her back into the moment, like a gentle tap on the shoulder. Ava inhales. The breath comes in quickly as usual. But when she exhales, it stops halfway, as if there's a door inside her that only opens part way. She isn't doing it on purpose. Her body is just holding the breath, holding the posture, holding something she can't quite name. She closes her eyes briefly, then opens them again. Not to meditate, just to check where she actually is. In a hotel room, alone. No announcements, no passengers, no emergencies. Just the steady sound of the AC, like a quiet stream running in the background. And still in her mind, tomorrow has already started. The alarm time, the early flight, the shuttle schedule, messages she hasn't replied to. Something someone said on the last flight that she keeps replaying, wondering if she should have responded differently. None of it is a disaster. It's just a lot. And when it's a lot, her body automatically chooses a familiar response. Hold tight. There's a moment when Ava notices the simplest thing of all. She's trying to take in more air without fully breathing out. Like pouring water into a glass that's already full. The water can't go in. It just spills over, creating a mess. And in the body that spill isn't water. It's tension. She places one hand on her chest, the other on her belly, the way she was once taught in a breathing class years ago. Not to do it right, just to feel. The AC keeps humming. The light stays warm. The room remains safe. Then she tries to breathe out a little longer, as if exhaling through a narrow straw. Slow, thin. Not forced, just extended. That exhale doesn't change her life. It doesn't erase tomorrow's schedule. It doesn't silence her thoughts right away. But it creates something small, a bit of space. And in that space, Ava realizes she doesn't have to hold everything with her body. She can let the breath do its job. And when the breath is allowed to fully leave, there's naturally room for the next one to come in. She exhales again. This time her shoulders drop a little. Her jaw unclenches. Her belly softens, as if her body has finally received the message. Tonight you don't need to stand guard. If you're listening and you recognize this quiet way of holding in the chest, in the shoulders, in the mind, that's okay. You don't need to fix it right now. Just notice it. Maybe try one longer exhale than usual, like setting down something you've been carrying all day. Ava remains seated on the edge of the bed, eyes resting on the warm light. And for the first time that evening, she feels like she can stay in her body, instead of running endlessly in her head. Ava stays there a little longer, not because she's trying to do anything the right way, but because there's no reason to hurry. When the exhale is allowed to travel its full length, her body seems to slow down with it. Not the heavy kind of slow, but the safe kind, like when a plane has finished descending and no longer needs to hold speed. She leans back against the headboard. The pillow supports her shoulders, soft and warm. The air conditioner continues its steady hum, unchanged, asking nothing of her attention. Ava rests a hand on her belly, just to feel the subtle movement of breathing. No counting, no timing. Just noticing breath in, breath out. Enough. A thought passes by, a faint image of tomorrow. But it doesn't pull a whole chain of thoughts in with it like usual. It arrives, pauses at the doorway, as if unsure whether to enter. And when Ava doesn't open the door, it leaves on its own. No drama, no struggle. She lies down. The mattress receives her as if it's been waiting. Ava pulls the blanket up to her chest. The fabric feels cool and light. She doesn't adjust the pillow again and again. She doesn't search for the perfect position. She just lets her weight be held. There's a feeling here that's different from giving up. It's the feeling of being supported without needing to do anything else. Her breathing is longer now, not because she's stretching it, but because nothing is holding it back. As she exhales, it feels like opening a small door inside herself, letting out what's built up all day, unsaid words, held smiles, unnecessary alerts. They don't disappear instantly, but they grow lighter, like luggage being set down on the floor. Ava realizes something very simple all day long. She's taken so much in sounds, requests, other people's emotions. But she rarely lets enough out. And a body that doesn't get to exhale fully will hold on to everything, even what it doesn't need. Tonight, just allowing a little release is enough to create space. The warm light spills across the ceiling. The shadows are soft without sharp edges. Ava doesn't stare at them. She lets her eyes stay half closed, just enough for the light to blur. The sound of the AC becomes more distant, like a stream farther away. In that space, she feels her heartbeat slow, not from exhaustion, but from safety. If an inhale comes and feels crowded, Ava lets it come only as far as it can. She doesn't force more in, no pushing. Then she exhales just a little longer, like the tide coming in, going out. The shore doesn't have to do anything. For a brief moment, a thought appears, I'm okay. And then she lets it drift away without holding on to it. No need to confirm it. No need to label it. A feeling of okayness doesn't need to be gripped to stay. If you're listening and you notice your chest feeling lighter, your belly softer, you can let that be. There's nothing else you need to do. And if you don't notice anything at all, that's fine too. Your breath is still doing its work even when you're not paying attention. Ava lets one exhale finish completely. Then another. The space between breaths grows longer. Not because she's controlling it, but because her body has found its own rhythm again. In that space, there are no demands, no schedules, just rest. She turns gently onto her side. The blanket makes a soft sound. Everything remains quiet. Nothing is being missed. Nothing needs to be made up for. Tonight doesn't ask her to be ready. If you fall asleep at some point while listening to this story, that's completely okay. You don't need to wait for a sign. Sleep isn't a reward. It's simply what happens when the body is finally allowed to exhale enough. And if you're still awake, there's no need to try to get to sleep. Just keep letting the breath move out softly, unhurried, and allow the next breath to find its way in when it's ready. Tonight, there's nothing more you need to hold. Just breathe out and let everything else arrive on its own. Carla has always thought of herself as someone who knows how to care. Caring at the right moment, checking in just enough, remembering small details that others tend to forget. With her client's hair, she does the same, watching closely, sensing moods, adjusting her tone so people feel looked after. Caring is how she shows love. But on some nights when everything is finally quiet, Carla feels a very specific kind of tired. Tired from caring too much. And deeper than that, tired from the fear that if she stops caring, everything will dry up. Carla is 48, a hairstylist at a small neighborhood salon. That day has been long. Many clients, many stories, many emotions that people leave behind without realizing it. When she gets home, she changes clothes, washes her face, then steps out into the backyard almost automatically. The yard isn't big, just a small space with a few potted plants, a row of basil, a small flowering bush by the fence. String lights on the porch cast a warm glow, softening everything. She picks up the garden hose. Water bursts out with a light hiss, then settles into a steady stream. Carla turns it toward the nearest pot, watering thoroughly, as if the plant has been waiting for her all day. The soil darkens, the smell of damp earth rises. She keeps watering longer than necessary, even though the soil already shines with moisture. In her mind, a conversation is being watered the same way. A text from her daughter earlier that afternoon, just 2 words, "Okay, Mom." Carla has read it again and again. What kind of okay is that? Is she upset? Tired? Is something wrong? She's not saying. Carla has typed a longer message, deleted it. Typed another, deleted that too. She tells herself she's just being caring. But the feeling in her chest doesn't feel like care. It feels like worry. Like the need to control. Like the fear of being left out. Carla moves to the second pot. A small plant she only planted a few weeks ago. The leaves are still thin and new. She waters more gently, but still too much. Water begins to spill over the edge of the pot, running across the concrete in thin lines. She pauses, watching the water flow away, and suddenly notices something simple. The soil is soaked. The plant doesn't need more water. It needs air. Space in the soil so the roots can breathe. She stands still. The water keeps running. Her hand hasn't turned the hose off yet. Carla lowers the flow, then shuts it off completely. The quiet that follows is surprisingly loud, like turning off a machine that's been running all day and suddenly hearing the house breathe. Carla looks down at the pot. The soil is saturated. Droplets cling to the surface. She remembers something a client once said about love. "I cared so much, I made them feel suffocated." At the time, Carla nodded like it was someone else's story. Tonight, the words return and rest gently on her chest. Some relationships are like plants. They need care. But if you water them every day, watering to be sure, watering because you're afraid they'll die, the roots lose their space to breathe. Not because the other person doesn't need love, but because love mixed with anxiety turns into pressure. Carla leans the hose against the wall and sits down on the back steps. The string lights cast a warm glow across her knees. The night air is cool. She hears distant cars, insects, and the sound of her own heart beating a little fast with a familiar restlessness. What if I don't text again? What if I don't ask more questions? What if I leave things alone and they drift away? She looks at the phone resting on the small table by the door. The screen is dark. No notifications. Carla feels the urge to pick it up, to check, to send one more message just to be sure. And in that moment, she sees it clearly. This is a habit. A habit born from love, but fed by anxiety. Carla doesn't judge herself. She's lived this way for years. With clients, with family, with friends. She's used to keeping connection by doing more. But tonight, sitting in front of pots heavy with water, she realizes something very simple. Sometimes loving isn't about adding more. It's about doing less. Less checking. Less intervening. Less watering something that's asking for space. She places a hand on her chest, reminding her body that she's still here. Not abandoned just because she hasn't sent another message. She inhales, then exhales. That exhale lasts a little longer, as if she's experimenting with doing nothing. If you're listening and there's someone in your life you keep wanting to water with worry, texting more, asking more, imagining more, that's okay. You're not wrong for caring. You're just using too much water on roots that need air. Carla looks back at the small plant. Its leaves are still green. Nothing has died just because she turned off the hose, and maybe a relationship is the same way. Carla stays seated on the back step a little longer. Not because she's waiting for something to happen, but because there's no reason to stand up right away. After turning off the hose, the space around her becomes noticeably quieter. Not quiet from a lack of sound, but quiet because nothing is being interfered with anymore. The night breeze moves through the yard, so light it only makes the string lights sway slightly. Carla draws her shoulders in a bit, feeling the cool air on her skin. In that pause, she notices something small but clear. Her heart is beating more slowly, not suddenly, not in a forced, relaxed way. just no longer driven by the question, should I do something else? She looks toward the pots. Water still pools on the surface of the soil, reflecting the lights in tiny points. She knows that by morning, the soil will be less wet. The roots will have space to breathe again. She doesn't need to stand guard. She doesn't need to adjust anything. Nature knows how to do its work when it's left alone. Carla thinks of her daughter, not to analyze the text message, just the face, the voice, the way she shrugs slightly when she says, "Okay, Mom." Something softens in Carla as she realizes this. Her love doesn't disappear just because she doesn't send another message tonight. It's still there. It's just no longer being watered with anxiety. The phone remains on the small table. The screen stays dark. Carla doesn't touch it. Not because she's forcing herself to let go, but because the urge simply isn't there. And in that not doing, a small trust begins to take root. Relationships don't need to be held together with tension. She stands and walks over to the small plant, bends down to look. One young leaf droops slightly from too much water. She doesn't touch it, doesn't fix it, just looks. Then she smiles very gently, the smile of someone who's realized she doesn't have to do anything more for things to live. Carla steps back inside and pulls the door closed, not locking it, just closing it to keep the warmth in. The living room light is soft. She moves slowly as if her body is relearning a pace without urgency. Each step carries no question that needs answering. When she lies down in bed, Carla pulls the blanket up to her shoulders. The fabric is soft. She places one hand on her belly, the other resting naturally at her side. Her breath moves in and out, no longer caught in her chest the way it was before. She doesn't try to lengthen it. She just lets it happen. A thought passes through tomorrow. I can check in again. Then it fades. Not because she pushes it away, but because it doesn't need to be decided tonight. Some decisions don't need to be watered in the dark. If you're listening and you recognize this habit of loving by worrying more than necessary tonight, you might try something very small. Do nothing extra. Don't send another message. Don't think one more thought. Just give the roots of everything some space. Love doesn't disappear when you pause. It changes shape. From tight to soft, from control to trust, from fear of loss to permission. Carla exhales a little longer than usual. Her shoulders sink into the mattress. Her body understands something now. She doesn't have to keep every relationship alive by force. Some parts belong to nature, and nature, when trusted, usually does its work well. If you fall asleep at some point while listening to this story, that's perfectly fine. You're not missing anything. Everything important is still growing even while you rest. And if you're still awake, there's no need to push sleep to arrive. Just lie still, let the breath keep doing its work, and allow this night to remain unwatered. Listen for a little while, and then let everything grow on its own. Sometimes exhaustion doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from repeating the same familiar motion over and over, without realizing you're not actually going anywhere. Kevin knows that feeling. It's like watching a hamster in a small cage, running fast, completely focused, the wheels spinning hard, while the cage itself stays exactly where it is. Kevin is 37, an accountant. This time of year is busy. The kind of busy where days and nights blur together without clear edges. That evening, the office is almost empty. The fluorescent lights hum softly overhead. The air conditioning blows steadily colder than necessary. On his desk, a spreadsheet glows on the screen, long rows of numbers lined up neatly, as if they've never known what it means to be tired. Kevin takes a sip of cold coffee. The bitter taste makes him wince slightly. He sets the cup down and looks back at the screen. His fingers move quickly, switching tabs, dragging the mouse, scanning. One number, then another. No major errors, no problems. And still he keeps checking, as if running faster might take him somewhere else. In his head, everything is running too. The to-do list. The tasks already finished, but still needing another review. The tasks not yet done, but already imagined ahead of time. He knows this feeling well. If he stops, something will be missed. If he stops, the wheel will stop spinning, and that would mean it isn't safe. Kevin shifts in his chair, leaning back, then forward again. The chair makes a small sound. He doesn't notice. He's used to his body speaking while his mind doesn't listen. In the corner of the room, the printer gives a soft beep and then goes quiet. There's no one there to print anything else. He suddenly realizes he's doing the same check for the third time. Not because the data has changed, just because the feeling inside him hasn't settled yet. Like the hamster that keeps running, not because there's a path, but because it doesn't know how to stand still inside the wheel. Kevin lifts a hand to his forehead. His skin feels tight. His eyes ache. But what exhausts him most isn't the number of hours worked. It's the sense of not getting anywhere. The feeling that no matter how fast he runs tomorrow, will just begin with another wheel. There's a very small moment when he stops moving the mouse. The cursor freezes. The numbers don't shift. And in that moment, nothing collapses. No alarms, no urgent emails, just the hum of the air conditioner and the steady light above. Kevin notices he's been holding his breath, not completely, just tight in the chest, like he's bracing for the next sprint. He exhales, not deeply, just enough to notice how many times he's been breathing in without ever paying attention. He looks at the spreadsheet one more time, then closes it, not because the work is finished, but because this round of running is enough for tonight. The screen shifts to the quieter desktop. The blue light softens. In his chest, a small space opens up, unfamiliar, but not frightening. Kevin stands and walks a few steps around his desk. The office carpet muffles his footsteps. He looks out the window. The city lights are still there, glowing in the night, but nothing is asking him to join in. Not every wheel needs you to run inside it. There's a truth Kevin has never really named before. Constant motion creates the feeling of control. Stopping doesn't. And that's why stopping can feel unsettling. But tonight in the empty office, he realizes something very simple. He isn't tied to this wheel. It only keeps spinning because he keeps running. He returns to his desk, gathers a few papers, and turns off the desk lamp. The room grows dimmer, softer. Kevin doesn't feel done, but he feels enough for now. If you're listening and you recognize this feeling of running endlessly in your own mind from one thought to the next, that's okay. You're not lazy. You're not failing. You're just inside a wheel that's been spinning for too long. And sometimes the only thing needed is to step out of it. Not forever, just for tonight. Kevin stands still in the office for a little while longer after turning off his desk lamp. Not because he's debating whether to keep working, but because his body is getting used to not having to lunge forward. When a movement has been repeated long enough, stopping can feel a little unsteady, like stepping onto solid ground after getting off an escalator. He puts on his jacket, turns off the monitor, then reaches up and switches off the ceiling lights. The room sinks into the dim glow from the hallway. The air conditioner keeps humming, but now it sounds farther away, like a noise that no longer needs attention. Kevin locks the door. The soft click of the lock is small, but enough to mark the end of a running cycle. The office hallway is empty. The carpet absorbs sound, softening everything. Kevin walks slowly, not because he's exhausted, but because there's no reason to rush anymore. When he reaches the parking lot, the air feels cooler. He inhales, then exhales, this time more fully. Not as an exercise, just because the breath finally has room to go somewhere. Inside the car, Kevin sits for a moment before starting the engine. His hands rest on the steering wheel. The dashboard is still dark. There's a strange but pleasant feeling, no to-do list right now. No spreadsheets, no wheel. He starts the car and drives out slowly. Streetlights form a chain of glowing circles ahead of him. Kevin doesn't turn on music, not because he wants silence, but because silence is already there. Each circle of light passes like a breath. No counting. No need to arrive sooner. A thought flickers. What about tomorrow? It appears then isn't fed. Kevin doesn't push it away. He just doesn't run after it. And without anyone driving the wheel, it slows on its own. When he gets home, Kevin takes off his shoes and sets his keys on the table. The apartment is quiet. The living room light is soft. He goes straight to the kitchen and pours a glass of water. Drinks slowly. The coolness moving down his throat feels real. Simple. It brings him back into his body, away from the familiar orbit of numbers. He sits down on the sofa. He doesn't open his laptop. He doesn't check his phone. Not out of discipline, but because the urge isn't there anymore. Kevin realizes something. The urge to run comes from the belief that if he stops, everything will fall apart. But tonight, everything is still standing. Nothing collapses. Nothing demands. He leans back and lets his head rest. His eyes drift half closed. Breath in, then out. Slower. Between the breaths, there's a small pause. In that pause, there's no goal to reach. No wheel that needs spinning. If you're listening and you recognize this habit of running in your own mind from one thought straight into the next, tonight you might try standing still for a single beat. You don't have to stop forever. Just don't run a little longer. The wheel slows down when there's no force pushing it. Kevin stands and walks to the bedroom. Lights turn off behind him. When he lies down, he doesn't adjust the pillow again and again. He doesn't search for the perfect position. He just lets his weight be held. There's a quiet kind of safety in being supported without having to do anything. One last thought flickers light as a firefly. I did enough for today. Kevin doesn't hold on to it. There's no need. It dissolves like everything else when it isn't gripped. His breathing slows. The wheel in his mind doesn't stop completely, but it turns slowly enough that it no longer makes noise. And in that slowing, his body knows what comes next. If you fall asleep at some point while listening to this story, that's perfectly fine. You're not missing anything. The wheel can wait until morning. Tonight you don't need to run. And if you're still awake, that's okay too. Just lie still a little longer. Let the quiet widen and allow the familiar motion to pass on its own. Tonight you don't need to go anywhere. Just step out of the wheel and rest. The mirror didn't flatter her. It never did. Not under that bathroom light, not this late, not after a day that had already taken too much out of her. Madison leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on the edge of the sink, and stared at her own face like it belonged to someone she was still trying to understand. The apartment was quiet. The kind of quiet that makes even small sounds feel loud. The faucet dripped once after she turned it off. Somewhere in the building, a distant door closed. The fan above her hummed softly, pulling warm air upward. Madison had spent most of the day looking at versions of herself. The version she posted. The version she replied with. The version she performed in short clips and captions, smiling at the right moments, sounding confident at the right times. She was good at it. She'd learned how to be on without it looking like effort. But now, alone in the bathroom, she felt like a phone with too many tabs open, bright heated, still running even after the work was over. She reached for a makeup wipe, dragged it across her cheek, and watched the cotton come away, slightly tinted. She did it again, slower this time. There was something calming about the motion. Simple. Quiet. No audience. In the mirror, her eyes looked tired. Not just sleepy tired in the way someone gets when they've been holding themselves together all day. She tried to smile just to see. It looked strange, like a gesture borrowed from another room. She let it drop. Madison wasn't having a crisis. Nothing dramatic had happened. No breakup, no scandal, no big failure. It was smaller than that, and somehow harder to name. It was the feeling that her worth lived outside of her. In reactions, in numbers, in who noticed, in whether she was wanted, admired, approved of. And when the noise stopped, she wasn't always sure what was left. She turned the faucet on again, letting water run over her hands. The sound filled the bathroom with a steady hush. She splashed her face, then patted it dry with a towel that smelled faintly like laundry soap. Her phone buzzed from the counter. A notification. She didn't pick it up. Just let it sit there, lighting up the edge of the sink and then going dark again. For a moment, she watched herself breathe. It was such an ordinary thing to notice, but it made her feel strangely human. Not a brand, not a profile, just a person with lungs and skin and a nervous system that didn't care how many likes she got that day. Madison leaned closer to the mirror, studying a small line near her mouth she hadn't noticed a year ago. It wasn't deep, it wasn't alarming, but it made her think about time and how quietly it moves through you. A memory drifted in something her grandmother used to say when Madison was little, when she'd run to her crying over a scraped knee or a bad day at school. "Smile at yourself first," her grandmother would say, gentle but certain. "Don't wait for the world to decide if you're worth being kind to." Madison had rolled her eyes back then. It sounded like something from a greeting card. But standing here now, it didn't feel cheesy. It felt practical, like advice for surviving in a world that trains you to outsource your self-worth. She set the towel down and stared at her reflection again this time, without scanning for flaws. She tried to look at herself the way she might look at a friend who'd had a long day. The way you look at someone you don't need to critique, someone you just want to understand. Her shoulders dropped slightly. It wasn't magical. It didn't fix anything. But it shifted something like moving a lamp so the harsh shadow softens. Madison placed one hand on the edge of the sink, grounding herself, and let the other rest on her own collarbone for just a second. The warmth of her skin under her palm felt real, immediate. Not a thought, not a story, just contact. She breathed in, then out, not as a technique, just as a permission. The phone buzzed again faintly. She ignored it again. The world could wait 2 minutes. The world could wait 10. She looked at her own eyes in the mirror. Not the whole face, not the whole image, just the eyes. They were still her eyes, even after everything. Even after the long day, the constant output, the constant comparison. Something in them was still steady. She didn't smile yet, not fully, but she softened her mouth just a little, like she was letting go of a habit she didn't need to keep holding. And in that small softening, she noticed a quiet truth. It wasn't that she needed more validation. It was that she needed to stop treating herself like someone who had to earn kindness. Madison turned off the bathroom light and left the door slightly open as she walked toward her bedroom. The hallway was dim, calm, the kind of dim that tells your brain it's safe to slow down. Behind her, the mirror stayed where it was reflecting an empty bathroom. It wasn't waiting to judge her. It wasn't asking for anything. It was just there. And for the first time all day, that felt like a relief. Madison lay back on her bed without turning on the lamp. The room was lit only by the soft glow from the streetlight outside filtered through the curtains. It wasn't dark enough to disappear into, but it was dark enough to stop inspecting everything. She rested one hand on her stomach, feeling it rise and fall. The other hand lay open beside her palm, up, fingers loose. Her body seemed to understand before her thoughts did that nothing more was required of her tonight. The day replayed itself in fragments. A comment she'd reread too many times. A moment where she'd wondered if she should have said something differently. A brief spike of relief when a post did well, followed by the quiet drop afterward. None of it arrived with the same sharpness it had earlier. It came through a layer of distance now, as if softened by the dim light. she thought again of the mirror. Not the image exactly, but the feeling of standing there without trying to fix anything, without adjusting angles, without searching for reassurance or bracing for disappointment, just meeting herself as she was. That felt new. Madison realized how rarely she did that. How often she approached herself like a problem to solve a version, to improve a thing, to optimize. Even rest had become something she tried to do well, something to succeed at. But lying here with the room quiet and her phone face down on the nightstand, she felt no pull to perform, no need to curate, no one to convince. The thought came gently without insistence, I'm already here. She remembered how easy it had been earlier to place her hand on her own chest, how grounding it felt to feel warmth instead of judgment. It hadn't been dramatic. It hadn't changed her life. But it had changed the tone of the moment. Sometimes healing wasn't about breakthroughs. Sometimes it was about not adding another layer of pressure. Madison rolled slightly onto her side, tucking her knees in just enough to be comfortable. The sheets were cool. The pillow held the familiar shape of her head. Her breathing slowed, not because she told it to, but because there was space for it to do so. She thought about how long she'd been waiting for permission to feel okay. Waiting for the right response, the right reaction, the right signal from outside herself. As if peace were something that had to be handed to her by someone else. But nothing had stopped her from offering it to herself. The mirror hadn't demanded anything. It hadn't praised or criticized. It had simply reflected what was there. And what was there beneath the layers of effort and expectation was someone who was tired but still whole. Someone who didn't need to earn rest. Someone who didn't need to be impressive in order to be worthy of care. Madison felt her jaw unclench slightly. Her shoulders sank into the mattress. A small exhale left her longer than the ones before. There was no urgency to fall asleep, no goal to reach. If sleep came, it would come. If it didn't, this quiet was still enough. She imagined the mirror again now, empty, the bathroom light off. Nothing staring back. Nothing asking her to be different. Just a room at rest. Her thoughts began to drift, not in a scattered way, but in the slow, wandering way that comes before sleep. Images blurred together. The sharp edges of the day softened. Madison didn't think about tomorrow. She didn't plan. She didn't rehearse. She stayed with what was simple and present: breath, warmth, stillness. If she smiled now, it wasn't for the mirror. It wasn't for anyone at all. It was the kind of smile that happens when you stop resisting yourself. Small, private, almost imperceptible. She let it fade naturally. In the quiet, there was nothing to fix, nothing to prove, nothing missing. Just a person resting inside her own life. And that was enough for the night. The box was heavier than Jason expected. It scraped softly against the wood floor as he pulled it out from under the bed, inch by inch, like it had been hiding down there on purpose. A thin layer of dust coated the top. He ran his finger across it and left a clean line through the gray. Jason sat back on his heels and stared at the box for a moment, as if waiting for it to explain itself. He hadn't planned to do this tonight. He'd only meant to straighten up his room, fold a couple shirts, stack some papers, clear the chair that had become a second closet. It was late and he'd been feeling restless in that familiar way. The way you feel when you've spent too much time in your own head and not enough time in your own life. He was home for a few days between semesters, staying in his childhood bedroom. The room looked almost the same as it always had, just slightly emptier now. Fewer posters, less clutter, a different kind of silence. In the living room, the TV had been on. Earlier, some show his mom liked to watch while she folded laundry. Now the house had settled. The air conditioner clicked on and off. The hallway light cast a soft line under his door. Jason lifted the lid of the box. Inside were things he hadn't touched in years. An old baseball glove flattened and dry, a stack of birthday cards with childish handwriting, a small notebook with a cracked spiral, a cheap plastic keychain shaped like a dinosaur. He picked it up, turning it over in his fingers. The plastic was scratched, the colors faded. For a moment he felt something in his chest, small and sudden, like a door opening briefly into a room he'd forgotten existed. He set the keychain down and pulled out the notebook. It was full of drawings, superheroes, made-up creatures, messy maps of imaginary worlds. He flipped through the pages slowly, not laughing, not cringing, just watching. The kid who made these drawings hadn't been worried about being impressive. He'd been worried about whether the next page had enough space. Jason closed the notebook and leaned back against the bed frame. He'd been telling himself lately that he needed to get his life together, that he needed to move faster, aim higher, figure it out sooner. He'd been scrolling through other people's lives like they were instruction manuals, comparing timelines, comparing accomplishments, comparing confidence. And every time he tried to catch up to that imagined standard, something in him felt more tired, not more alive. Tonight, the box under the bed wasn't offering him a plan. It was offering him a memory of being okay without one. He reached in again and found a small trophy, the kind kids get just for participating. It wasn't shiny anymore. The gold paint had dulled. The plastic base was chipped. The little figure on top looked almost comical. Jason smiled despite himself. He remembered holding it with both hands, walking out of the gym like he'd won something huge. He remembered his dad clapping his mom, taking a picture. The trophy hadn't been proof that he was the best. It had been proof that he'd shown up. And somehow back then, that had been enough. Jason set the trophy on the floor beside him. He looked around the room, the familiar dresser, the old desk with a few new scratches, the closet door that didn't close all the way unless you lifted it slightly. Everything looked ordinary. Nothing about it screamed treasure. And yet sitting here surrounded by these small pieces of his own history, he felt a warmth he hadn't felt in a while. Not excitement, not motivation, just a quiet sense of being held by something simple. He realized how often he'd been searching for happiness like it was somewhere else, somewhere farther, somewhere bigger, somewhere that would finally make him feel certain, like happiness was a destination and his current life was just the waiting room. But the kid who had lived in this room hadn't been waiting for his life to begin. He'd been living it. Jason picked up one more item from the box, a folded piece of paper creased many times. He opened it carefully. It was a list written in pencil titled, "Things I Like." Underneath were simple entries: pizza, drawing, rain, being home when it's dark outside, mom's hot chocolate, when dad tells jokes. Jason read the list twice. The words weren't deep. They weren't wise. They weren't trying to sound like anything. They were honest. He felt his throat tighten slightly, not with sadness exactly, but with recognition. There had been a time when joy didn't require permission, when liking something didn't have to be justified, when being alive in a small moment was enough. Jason folded the paper back up and held it in his hand for a long second. Outside his room, the house stayed quiet. The air conditioner hummed. Somewhere, the refrigerator made a soft clicking sound. He slid the box a little closer, as if wanting it nearby. Not because he needed to go backward, but because he needed to remember what he'd been running past. Jason didn't rush to put anything back. He sat there on the floor a while longer, the box open beside him, the small pile of objects spread out like a quiet map of where he'd been. None of it felt heavy now. None of it asked him to go back or become someone he no longer was. It just existed calmly, without expectation. He leaned his back against the bed and let his legs stretch out in front of him. The carpet felt familiar under his palms, worn thinner in the spots where he'd once sat to do homework or build something out of nothing. The room held his weight easily, like it remembered how. Jason thought about how often he'd been chasing a feeling of arrival. The idea that one day he'd wake up and everything would click. That he'd feel confident, complete, certain. That happiness would finally feel stable, earned, permanent. It was a tempting story, a motivating one. But sitting here now, it felt slightly off, like a direction sign that kept pointing farther away from where he already was. The box hadn't given him answers. It hadn't offered a future. It had simply reminded him that contentment had once lived in ordinary things. And maybe it still did. Jason gathered the items slowly, not in a hurry. He stacked the notebook, the cards, the small trophy, the keychain. Each thing returned to the box without ceremony. When he reached the folded list, he paused again. Being home when it's dark outside. He looked around the room, lit only by the lamp on his desk. The rest of the house was quiet, safe. Nothing demanded his attention. For the first time in days, his mind wasn't racing ahead to the next requirement. He was home. It was dark outside. And somehow, that was enough. Jason placed the paper back into the box and closed the lid. He didn't slide it all the way under the bed this time. He left it halfway out like a reminder that it was there if he ever needed it again. He stood, stretched his arms overhead, and felt his back release slightly. The familiar stiffness eased. His body, like the room, seemed relieved to stop being measured against anything else. Jason changed into an old t-shirt and lay down on the bed. The mattress felt softer than he remembered. Or maybe he was just more willing to let himself sink into it. He stared up at the ceiling for a moment, watching the faint shadows shift as a car passed outside. His thoughts drifted not in a searching way, but in a slow, wandering one. He thought about how often people missed their own lives while trying to upgrade them. How easy it was to overlook what was already holding you quietly every day. The treasure under the bed hadn't been about the past. It had been about presence. Jason rolled onto his side, tucking the blanket around himself. The house made its usual nighttime sounds. Pipes settling. A floorboard shifting somewhere. Familiar noises that didn't need interpretation. He felt his breathing slow. His jaw unclenched. His shoulders softened into the mattress. If happiness was a place, it didn't seem far away anymore. It seemed close, almost obvious, like something that had been there the whole time, waiting patiently while he looked elsewhere. Jason didn't label the feeling. He didn't try to hold on to it. He let it be what it was, quiet, gentle, complete enough. The box stayed where it was, half hidden, half seen. The room stayed ordinary, and Jason rested inside it, not searching, not striving, just here. And for tonight, that was all that was needed. The hotel room was quiet in the way only temporary places are. Not the quiet of home, but the kind that doesn't know you yet. The air conditioner hummed steadily. A thin line of light slipped in through the edge of the curtains from the parking lot outside. Ava lay on the bed with her shoes already kicked off, suitcase still closed near the door, as if she hadn't decided whether to stay or leave. She was supposed to be resting. That's what layovers were for. That's what people said. But rest didn't always arrive just because the body stopped moving. Sometimes the mind kept pacing, flipping through unfinished thoughts, the way fingers flip through songs that never quite land on the right one. Ava reached for her phone, then stopped. She set it face down on the nightstand and stared up at the ceiling instead. The faint texture of the paint caught the light differently in each corner, uneven, imperfect. She followed it with her eyes until her thoughts slowed just enough to notice her own breathing again. She thought about how often her life felt like this room. Useful, functional, in motion, but somehow paused. At 29, Ava had learned how to pack light. She knew how to walk quickly through airports, how to smile without overthinking, how to adjust to time zones and expectations. She was good at moving forward. What she wasn't good at was knowing when she had arrived. Lately, a quiet unease had been following her. Not panic, not despair, just a low hum beneath everything, like a melody waiting for its next note. Is this it, or am I still warming up? She rolled onto her side and reached into her carry-on, pulling out a small notebook she kept tucked in the front pocket. It wasn't a journal exactly, more like a place for fragments, lines she liked, half-formed thoughts, things she didn't want to forget, but didn't yet know how to finish. She flipped it open. Most of the pages were unfinished. Sentences that stopped mid-thought. Lists without conclusions. Ideas circled once, then left alone. Ava traced one line with her finger. It had been written months ago during another night in another city. I think I'm waiting for the part where it all makes sense. She smiled faintly and closed the notebook. Growing up, she'd believed life would have clear movements, verses, choruses, a bridge that explained everything before the ending arrived. She'd imagined she'd know when she reached the real part, the part that would confirm she was on the right track. But nothing had announced itself. Instead, life had unfolded quietly. Job offers that felt both exciting and uncertain. Relationships that ended not with explosions, but with gentle drifting apart. Choices that seemed reasonable at the time, then ambiguous later. Nothing had gone wrong, and yet something felt unfinished. Ava sat up and swung her legs over the side of the bed. The carpet was soft under her feet, patterned in a way she would never remember tomorrow. She walked to the window and pulled the curtain back just a little. Outside the parking lot, lights cast pale circles on the pavement. A few cars sat still, engines ticking faintly as they cooled. Somewhere in the distance, a truck passed on the highway, its sound rising and falling like a breath. She thought about how songs worked. How the first verse often didn't explain much. How melodies repeated before they resolved. How some of the most meaningful parts were transitions, places where nothing seemed to happen, but everything was quietly shifting. Maybe life was more like that than she'd expected. Maybe it wasn't meant to be judged mid-song. Ava rested her forehead lightly against the cool glass. The reflection that looked back at her was faint, layered over the dark outside. She didn't study it. She didn't search for answers there. She just stood. The feeling of being behind softened slightly. Not gone, just quieter. Like a note that didn't need to be resolved right away. She returned to the bed and lay back down, this time pulling the blanket up around her shoulders. The room held her without comment. It didn't ask where she was going next. It didn't ask if she was doing enough. It just existed, complete in its temporary way. Ava closed her eyes. For the first time that evening, she allowed the thought to settle without argument. Maybe this part isn't missing anything. Maybe it's just not finished yet. The air conditioner continued its steady rhythm. The light outside didn't change. The song of her life stayed right where it was open, unresolved, still unfolding. And that, for now, was enough to rest inside. Ava didn't fall asleep right away. She lay there listening to the quiet mechanics of the room, the steady hum of the air conditioner, the faint electrical buzz inside the walls, the distant sound of tires on asphalt far below. None of it asked for her attention. It was the kind of background noise that didn't interrupt thought, but gently slowed it. Her mind wandered again, but this time without urgency. She thought about all the moments she'd labeled as in between. The jobs that weren't quite careers. The relationships that mattered, but didn't last. The cities she passed through without planting roots. She had treated those chapters like placeholders, like they were supposed to lead somewhere else before they could count. But lying here now, she wondered if that was fair. Songs didn't rush to their endings. They lingered. They repeated phrases. They left space between notes. Ava rolled onto her back and placed one hand on her chest, feeling the gentle rise and fall beneath her palm. Her heartbeat was calm, unremarkable, steady enough to trust. She remembered being younger and assuming that clarity would arrive all at once. That one day she'd wake up knowing exactly who she was and what came next. That life would lock into place like a finished composition. Instead, it had kept improvising. And maybe that wasn't a flaw. Maybe it was the nature of being alive. She thought about the notebook again, about all the half-written lines she'd collected over the years. She'd always told herself she'd finish them later when she understood more. But maybe the unfinished lines weren't waiting to be completed. Maybe they were meant to stay open, like questions that didn't need answers to be meaningful. The room felt softer now, as if the edges had blurred. Ava adjusted the pillow under her head and felt her shoulders sink deeper into the mattress. The tension she'd carried earlier, the sense that she was running out of time, had loosened its grip. She wasn't late. She wasn't early. She was simply here inside this measure of the song. Outside, a car door closed. Someone laughed briefly, then the sound faded. Life continued without announcing its purpose, without explaining itself. Ava let her breathing follow the rhythm of the room. In, out. No effort, no correction. She realized she'd been judging her life as if it were already over, as if the ending had been written and she was falling short of it. But you couldn't judge a melody before it resolved. You couldn't call a song incomplete when it was still being played. The pressure to define herself softened. She didn't need to know where everything was leading. She didn't need to label this chapter. She didn't need to turn her uncertainty into a problem to solve tonight. Some parts of life were meant to be lived before they were understood. Ava's thoughts slowed, further drifting like notes stretched longer than usual. The sense of being unfinished no longer felt like a failure. It felt like permission. Permission to continue without explanation. Permission to rest without resolution. The hotel room stayed quiet and neutral, offering no commentary. The temporary nature of it all felt strangely comforting. Nothing here was asking her to stay forever. Nothing was asking her to leave either, just to be. Ava's hand slipped from her chest to the mattress beside her. Her fingers relaxed, curling naturally. The last clear thought that passed through her mind was gentle and unforced. The song isn't done, and it doesn't need to be. Sleep came quietly after that, not as a reward, not as a conclusion, but as a pause between notes. The music continued somewhere beneath it all, unhurried, still unfolding. The parking lot was still dark when Marcus turned the key. The engine came to life with a low, familiar sound, steady and unremarkable. He didn't pull out right away. He let the car sit there, headlights off dashboard, glowing softly in front of him. It was that hour before morning, fully decided to arrive, the sky not quite black, not quite blue. Marcus rested his forearms on the steering wheel and looked through the windshield. The road ahead was empty. No traffic, no rush. Just pavement stretching forward, waiting. He'd been awake for a while, not because he couldn't sleep, but because his body had learned this schedule too well. Years of early shifts had trained him to rise before the world did, to move before anyone asked. He liked that about himself. He liked being reliable. He liked being the one who showed up. But lately, something about that had started to feel heavy. Marcus was 41 now. A UPS driver. Strong hands, strong back. The kind of person people counted on without thinking much about it. When something needed to be carried, he carried it. When something needed to be done, he did it. And somewhere along the way, he'd begun to wait. Not consciously, not dramatically, just quietly. He waited for someone to notice, for someone to say, "You're doing enough," for someone to turn on a light and tell him he was headed in the right direction. The dashboard clock glowed faintly. He didn't check the time. He knew it by feel. Marcus reached to the side and picked up his thermos, taking a slow sip of coffee. It was still hot, bitter, grounding. He set it back in the cup holder and exhaled. Across the lot, one streetlight flickered, then steadied. The light didn't reach far, just enough to illuminate a small patch of asphalt beneath it. Everything else stayed in shadow. Marcus watched it for a moment longer than necessary. It reminded him of something his grandfather used to say when Marcus was a kid, whenever he complained about not knowing what to do next. "Don't wait for the sun," his grandfather would say. "Light your own lamp, just enough to see the next step." Back then, Marcus hadn't understood what that meant. He'd thought it was about confidence or bravery, or being loud about what you wanted. Now, sitting alone in his truck before dawn, it felt different. Maybe it wasn't about becoming brighter. Maybe it was about becoming steadier. Marcus rested back against the seat. The fabric was worn, molded to his shape over years of use. This truck had seen a lot of his days: early mornings, long routes, quiet lunches eaten alone. It had never asked him to explain himself. He thought about how often he'd measured his worth by how much he could carry, how much responsibility he could shoulder without complaining, how little light he needed from others to keep going. But lately, the waiting had crept in. Waiting for validation, waiting for reassurance, waiting for some external signal that all this effort meant something. The streetlight flickered again, then held. Marcus realized that it didn't illuminate the whole lot. It didn't need to. It only lit what was directly beneath it. Enough to stand, enough to move. He turned the headlights on. The road ahead brightened instantly, the beam cutting through the dimness. Not the whole road, just the part right in front of him. Enough to drive, enough to trust. Marcus felt something shift inside his chest, not relief exactly, but recognition. He didn't need the whole path lit up. He didn't need guarantees. He didn't need permission. He just needed enough light for the next mile. Marcus put the truck in gear and eased forward, tires rolling softly over the asphalt. As he drove toward the exit, the sky ahead lightened almost imperceptibly. Morning would come whether he waited or not, and for the first time in a while, he didn't feel like he was waiting for it. The road stayed quiet as Marcus drove, the tires humming steadily beneath him. Streetlights passed one by one, each illuminating a small circle of pavement before falling behind. None of them tried to light the whole way. They did their part, then let go. Marcus kept his hands loose on the wheel. His shoulders, usually braced for a long day ahead, had softened. The familiar route unfolded in front of him, turns he knew by heart, intersections he could navigate without thinking. The truck moved forward easily, as if it too understood that there was no need to rush. He thought about how long he'd been waiting for something to change. Not the job, not the schedule, but the feeling that his life would somehow feel more complete once someone else acknowledged it. Like the weight he carried would feel lighter once it was seen. But driving like this in the early quiet, he noticed something different. The light he needed was already there. It didn't come as praise or recognition. It came as the steady glow of knowing what to do next. Turn here. Slow down there. Keep moving. Marcus remembered all the small choices he made each day that no one applauded. Getting up early, finishing routes, helping a neighbor load a box, calling his sister back even when he was tired. None of it felt heroic. None of it needed to. It was enough to be consistent. The sky continued to brighten just slightly, not enough to erase the darkness completely. Marcus didn't watch it closely. He let it happen in the background. He didn't need to track progress to trust that it was happening. He took another sip of coffee. It had cooled a bit, but the taste was still familiar, comforting. He smiled faintly, thinking about how many mornings had started exactly like this. How many he'd rushed through half-present waiting for something else to arrive. This morning felt different, not because anything had changed, but because he wasn't asking it to. Marcus reached a long stretch of road with no lights at all. Just darkness beyond the headlights. The beam ahead held steady, revealing the lane lines and the edges of the road. Enough to keep going. He thought about his grandfather again. About the way he'd spoken without drama, as if what he was saying didn't need to be impressive to be true. Light your own lamp. It didn't mean doing everything alone. It didn't mean shutting people out. It meant not giving away the responsibility of your own sense of direction. It meant trusting that your inner sense of enough didn't have to be approved by anyone else. Marcus felt his breathing deepen naturally, matching the rhythm of the drive. In, out. The road flowed under him mile by mile. He wasn't thinking about the rest of the day anymore. He wasn't rehearsing conversations or counting stops. He was just here in motion, guided by a light that moved with him. The truck turned into another lot, then another street. The world was waking slowly now. A few cars appeared. A storefront sign flickered on. Ordinary life beginning again. Marcus parked briefly, shut off the engine, and sat in the quiet that followed. The sudden stillness felt complete, not empty. He rested his hands in his lap and closed his eyes for a moment. He didn't feel the need to ask whether this was enough. It was. The light had done its job. The path had revealed itself step by step. And Marcus, steady and unremarkable in the best way, continued on. The oil lamp didn't burn brighter than necessary. It simply stayed lit. And that was all it ever needed to do. Some evenings, Lily isn't sure whether she's tired from the drive itself or from staring too long through a fogged-up pane of glass. Not foggy enough to block everything, just foggy enough to make what's ahead feel unclear, uncertain, forcing her to squint a little more, tense a little more, as if trying harder will make the road appear. Lily is 47, an HR manager. That night, she's sitting in her car, parked in front of her house. The engine is off. The headlights are still on. A thin layer of fog coats the windshield. Streetlights bend through the haze, forming soft, scattered halos. Nothing dangerous, but not clear enough to feel reassuring either. She rests both hands on the steering wheel, not driving in right away. The day has been longer than she expected. A difficult meeting, a conversation that needed to happen but didn't quite finish. An email she wrote and deleted several times, unsure which tone was the right one. When everything finally ended, she found herself here sitting in the car, looking through the glass as if the road ahead were asking something more from her. Lily leans forward and wipes one corner of the windshield with her sleeve. The motion is quick, a bit forceful. The fog smears instead of disappearing. The wiped patch turns cloudy, warping the streetlights even more. She stops and notices she's just done what she often does in her own mind, trying to handle uncertainty with force. There are moments when if we can't see clearly, our first instinct is to break whatever's in the way. Push harder. Be decisive. But with a windshield that only makes things worse. Lily exhales very lightly. Her breath briefly adds more fog, then fades. She turns on the air fan at a low setting, letting the air circulate. Nothing changes right away. But slowly the fog begins to thin. She opens the car door. Cool air rushes in. Lily grabs a tissue from the glove compartment, folds it, and wipes the glass again, this time more slowly. No pressure, just enough to touch. The fog gives way to a small clear patch, just enough to see the white lane line ahead. Not the whole road, just a section. That small clear space calms her. Not because it solves everything, but because it reminds her of something simple. The problem isn't that the glass is broken. It's just fogged. And fog doesn't need to be shattered. It needs to be wiped. Lily looks through that clear patch. The familiar street. The familiar trees. Nothing new. But when fog settles on the glass, even familiar things can start to feel suspicious. In her mind, the thoughts from earlier that day feel the same. Not big problems, just too much condensation from stress, from trying to do things right, clinging to the surface she's looking through. She thinks back to the meeting, the feeling that she said enough, but still wondering if she should have said it differently. She's been hitting that thought all evening, replaying it, analyzing it, editing it in her head. And all it's done is make things murkier, like wiping glass with a damp sleeve. Lily sets the tissue down and sits quietly in the car. She doesn't do anything else, doesn't turn on music, doesn't rush inside. She just lets the fan run, letting the air do its job. The fog thins gradually, almost unnoticeable if you're not watching. The streetlights sharpen. Edges become clearer. A different feeling appears. Not relief, more like less strain. She realizes she doesn't need to see the entire road at once. She only needs to see enough to take the next step. And to do that, she doesn't need more force. She needs less. If you're listening and your life feels like you're looking through a fogged-up windshield, not stuck, just unclear tonight, you don't need to break anything. Maybe you just need to wipe gently, with a breath, with a pause, with letting go of the urge to see everything right now. Lily looks through the windshield again. Not perfect. A few foggy edges remain, but the road is clear enough to drive. She starts the car, and lets it roll forward slowly. No rushing, no speeding up, just moving. And maybe the mind works the same way. When you stop hitting the fog, the path shows itself one section at a time. Lily drives slowly along the familiar street. Not because she's afraid, but because there's no need to rush. The streetlights slide across the windshield, now less smeared, less distorted. The glass isn't perfectly clear. It's just clear enough that she doesn't have to squint anymore. And with that, something else inside her softens too. The urge to tense up and look harder. She arrives home, parks the car, and turns off the engine. In the quiet that follows, Lily stays seated for a few extra seconds, not to keep thinking, just to notice that the fog inside her has settled as well. Not gone completely, but thinner. She opens the car door. The night air is cool, carrying the scent of damp grass. Lily closes the door gently, as if she doesn't want to break the calm that's there. She steps inside, turns on the living room light at a low setting. Warm yellow light spreads over familiar furniture. Everything is still there. Nothing needs to be rearranged right now. Lily sets her bag down and takes off her jacket. Her movements are unhurried, no longer following the usual get things done sequence. She notices she doesn't need to replay the meeting. She doesn't need to rewrite the email in her head. Those thoughts may still pass by, but they're no longer stuck to the glass she's looking through. They hover at the edges, blurry and not demanding. She walks into the kitchen and pours a glass of water. Drinks slowly. The coolness moving down her throat is very real. A simple sensation pulls her back into her body, a place without fog, only the clear feeling of each sip, each swallow. Lily sits down on the sofa. She doesn't turn on the TV. She doesn't check her phone. Not out of discipline, but because there's no urge, she leans back and exhales. The breath leaves more fully than before. And in the space between breaths, a gentle realization appears. Not all uncertainty is a signal to act harder. She remembers wiping the windshield in the car. When her hand slowed down, when the pressure eased, the clear space appeared. The same is true for the mind. When she stops hitting her thoughts, stops scrubbing with analysis what needs to be seen, shows itself bit by bit. No forcing required. Lily stands, turns off the living room light, and walks toward the bedroom. The light fades behind her. In the bedroom, she draws the curtains, leaving a thin line of glow from the streetlight outside. The room is dark enough to rest, bright enough not to feel lost. When she lies down, Lily doesn't search for the perfect position. She lets her body choose. Her shoulders sink into the mattress. Her back is supported. Breath in, then out. With each exhale, it feels like gently wiping away a very thin layer of fog, not on the windshield, but on the way she sees things. A thought passes through. How will I say it tomorrow? It arrives, then pauses. It doesn't pull a chain of thoughts with it. Lily doesn't open the door for it. She doesn't slam the door shut either. She just lets it stand at the threshold and then leave on its own. If you're listening and you recognize the habit of wanting to break the glass, whenever things feel unclear, pushing yourself to be more decisive, think faster, fix more, tonight you might try the opposite. Wipe gently, with a slower breath. By letting time do its part, Fog isn't the enemy. It's just warm air meeting a cold surface. Tension meeting fatigue. When conditions change, fog clears on its own. Nothing needs to be broken. Lily closes her eyes. The darkness softens. She doesn't need to see the entire road. She only needs to see enough to rest. And in that enough, her body knows what comes next. If you fall asleep at some point while listening to this story, that's perfectly fine. You're not missing anything. The road doesn't disappear when your eyes close. It's still there in the morning when the glass is clearer. And if you're still awake, that's okay too. Just lie still a little longer. Let the breath keep gently wiping what remains foggy and allow the night to open in its own quiet way. Listen for a little while, and then let everything come into view just enough. Sometimes anxiety doesn't arrive like a storm. It comes much more quietly, like a string that's been pulled tight all day long. By evening, it doesn't snap. It doesn't make a sound. It just vibrates faintly inside, just enough to keep you from fully resting. You're not panicking. You still do everything you're supposed to do. But when the day is over, when the house is quiet, when no one needs anything from you anymore, that string still hasn't loosened. Susan knows that feeling well. She's 49, a mid-level manager at a large company, the kind of person whose calendar is full a week in advance. That evening, she's sitting alone at the kitchen table. The overhead light is off. Only a small lamp casts a soft glow onto the wooden surface. In front of her is a printed performance review folded neatly in half, placed carefully, like something that needs to be dealt with. Beside it sits a cup of tea that went cold a while ago. In the quiet kitchen, the wall clock sounds louder than usual. Tick, tock. Each beat a reminder that time keeps moving, whether she moves with it or not. Susan reaches out and touches the paper, smoothing the crease with her fingers, then stops. She's already read it 3 times today. Nothing unexpected. A few compliments. A few bullet points for improvement. The kind of language she could almost predict before reading it. And yet, her chest still feels tight. Not because she's afraid of losing her job. Not because anyone blamed her. Just that familiar sense of not being enough. Not good enough. Not fast enough. Not careful enough. As if there's an invisible force constantly pulling the string inside her a little tighter, just in case it can still hold. Susan lifts the cup and takes a small sip, then sets it back down when she realizes it's cold. She doesn't get up to reheat it. She just watches the faint steam on the ceramic fade into the air. For a brief moment, she notices her shoulders are raised. Not from the cold, but from tension. She lets them drop gently, almost without thinking. And just from that small movement, her breath deepens slightly. Some strings, if they're too loose, make no sound. But if they're pulled too tight, no one else has to pull them anymore. They start hurting themselves. Not out of malice, just from trying to do their job for too long. Susan isn't thinking about philosophy. She's just looking at the paper in front of her and realizing she's reading it like a verdict, not a work note. Each bullet point is tied to a familiar voice in her head. I should have done better. Why didn't I think of that sooner? Someone else would have handled this better. She folds the paper again more carefully this time and sets it off to the side of the table out of reach. Not putting it away forever, just not keeping it right in front of her. That small action creates a strange kind of space, like setting down something heavy and realizing you've been carrying it longer than you thought. Susan leans back in her chair. The wooden back is firm, not comfortable, but solid enough to support her. She closes her eyes for a moment, then opens them again. She isn't trying to meditate. She isn't trying to calm herself down. She's just sitting there in her familiar kitchen under the warm light, with the clock still ticking at its steady, unhurried pace. There's something people rarely say about those who worry a lot. They don't worry because they enjoy it. They worry because they've grown used to holding everything together. And when they loosen their grip even a little, it feels like they're doing something wrong. As if the moment they stop holding on, everything will fall apart. Susan opens a drawer and takes out a pen, turning it slowly between her fingers. The soft sound of plastic brushing against itself barely registers. She thinks about tomorrow, the meeting, the tasks, the things that could happen. And then unexpectedly, she realizes she doesn't need to solve all of it right now. Not because it doesn't matter, but because this moment isn't meant for pulling the string any tighter. She sets the pen down. Both hands rest on the table, feeling the cool surface beneath her palms. One breath comes in. One breath goes out. Not much deeper than usual, just slower, as if her body is quietly finding its way back to balance. Not too tight, not giving up. If you're listening to this and recognize yourself in the habit of holding everything too tightly, that's okay. You don't need to completely let go. You only need to stop pulling a little more, just enough to let the string loosen so it doesn't hurt you anymore. Susan stands, turns off the kitchen light, and leaves the room in dimness. The folded paper is still there. It hasn't disappeared. It will still be there tomorrow. But tonight she doesn't need to tense herself around it, and maybe just that alone is enough for one night. After turning off the kitchen light, Susan doesn't go straight to bed. She pauses for a moment in the hallway where the light from the living room spills out just enough that she doesn't need to turn on another lamp. It's not because there's more to do. Her body just isn't in a hurry. When you're used to living in a constant rhythm of getting things done, standing still for a few seconds can feel strangely unfamiliar. She walks slowly into the living room. On the bookshelf are books she read a long time ago, their spines slightly worn. Susan reaches out and touches one at random. She doesn't pull it out. She just lets her fingertips rest on the cover. There were times she believed she always needed to read more, learn more, improve more. But tonight that sense of lack isn't there. There's only a feeling of enough for now. She sits down on the sofa. She doesn't adjust the cushions. She doesn't search for the perfect position. She just sits the way her body wants to sit. One foot on the floor, the other loosely bent. Her shoulders rest against the back of the couch. A long exhale slips out. Not on purpose, just because there's no longer a reason to hold it in. The string inside her, the one that's been pulled tight all day, doesn't suddenly loosen all at once. It doesn't disappear, but it stops vibrating, like a string after it's been set down, no longer pulled, no longer touched. The sound fades, not because it's forced into silence, but because there's no more tension acting on it. Susan thinks about all the times she's tried to do things right, on time, by the book, meeting expectations. She doesn't regret those efforts. They brought her here. But maybe not every moment requires the same amount of force. There are stretches of the road where gripping the steering wheel like you're on the highway will only tire you out before you arrive. Outside, the city keeps moving at its own pace. A car passes by, then fades into the distance. A traffic light changes color at the corner. Susan doesn't follow any of it closely. She just knows that things are still happening even without her involvement. There's a quiet relief in that realization, hard to put into words. She rests both hands on her thighs. Her palms feel warmer than the tabletop from earlier. Her fingers curl naturally, not clenched, not stretched open, just there, in between. Maybe this is what people mean by balance, but Susan doesn't need to name it. She just knows this position doesn't hurt. If a thought comes up, she doesn't push it away. She simply notices it. Oh, there it is. And lets it pass like a distant sound. Not every thought needs to be followed to the end. Some only need to be seen. Time seems to slow down. Or maybe the pressure around time has eased. Susan doesn't check the clock. She doesn't need to know how much time has passed. In that quiet space, she realizes something very simple. Peace doesn't come from having everything sorted out. It comes from stopping the sorting, at least for now. She stands up again this time to go to bed. She doesn't bring the printed review with her. She doesn't bring the pen. She only brings a body that feels a little lighter than before. When she lies down, she doesn't force her eyes to close. She lets her eyelids grow heavy in their own time. Some nights, you don't need a solution. You only need permission to stop pulling the string, to let it stay at its natural tension, not so loose that you give up, not so tight that it hurts, just enough that tomorrow when you need it, it can still resonate in a healthier way. If you fall asleep at some point while listening to this story, that's completely okay. There's no right moment to sleep. There's only the moment your body is ready. And if you're still awake, that's okay too. You're in a space that doesn't demand anything from you. No pressure, no urgency, no grading. Just one more breath, in and out. As light as setting down something you've been holding all day. The night doesn't need you to be perfect. It only needs you to stop bracing. Listen for a little while, and then let yourself sleep. Sometimes what exhausts us isn't the road ahead, but the things we're still carrying from the part of the road already behind us. Tasks that are finished, situations that are over, decisions that have already been made. And yet, in our minds, none of them have truly been set down. Miguel is 45 years old. He works as a cook in a small restaurant. His evening shift ends late. When he steps outside, the sky is already fully dark. the street in front of the restaurant quieter now, with only a few street lights spilling onto the pavement. He walks home the way he's done for years. Not because he doesn't have a car, but because walking helps him let the day slowly drain away. Over Miguel's shoulder hangs an old canvas bag. Inside there's nothing heavy, an extra shirt, a water bottle, a few small things. And yet his shoulder aches. Not because of the bag, but because all day long he's been carrying far more than what's inside it. In his mind, a sentence from earlier keeps replaying. A small moment in the kitchen, a decision he made on instinct, then questioned afterward. I should have done that differently. The thought keeps circling as if it hasn't accepted that the moment has already passed. Miguel stops by a bench along the sidewalk. He sets the bag down at his feet and rubs his shoulder gently. A sigh slips out, unplanned. His body speaks before his mind comes up with anything new. He sits there for a while, watching the few cars that pass by. Each one moves forward and doesn't come back. Only his thoughts keep looping. When he was younger, Miguel once heard a story. A man crossed a river using a boat. After reaching the other side, instead of leaving the boat behind, the man lifted it onto his shoulders and kept walking. Everyone who saw him thought it looked heavy. But the man carrying the boat said, "I need it. You never know, there might be another river ahead." Back then, Miguel laughed. But tonight, sitting on the cold bench, the story feels strangely familiar. Not because he's carrying an actual boat, but because he's carrying things that have already done their job. The conversation in the kitchen helped him react quickly in the moment. The worry helped him be more careful. The replaying and rethinking once helped him avoid mistakes. But that river has already been crossed, and he's still carrying everything on his shoulders, as if setting it down would mean losing something important. Miguel bends down and opens the canvas bag. He rearranges a few items, even though nothing is really out of place. The movement is simple, unhurried. The soft rustle of fabric is barely audible. And in that moment, the thoughts in his head slow down too. They don't disappear. They just stop crowding each other. Some habits are hard to let go of, not because they're bad, but because they once helped us. We get used to keeping everything just in case, holding on to words we said, small mistakes, all the what-ifs. Like carrying the boat simply because we're afraid there might be another river ahead. Miguel closes the bag. This time, instead of putting it back on his shoulder right away, he leaves it on the bench. His shoulders drop slightly on their own. Not much, but enough for him to notice the difference. This lightness doesn't come from life suddenly being easier. It comes from no longer forcing himself to carry more than he needs. He doesn't promise himself that he'll never overthink again. He doesn't set a goal to let go perfectly. He just notices that maybe he doesn't need to carry everything right now. Miguel stands up and lifts the bag onto his shoulder again. But this time he adjusts the strap so it sits more comfortably. Not too tight, not too loose, just enough to keep moving. The road home is still there, but his shoulders feel lighter than they did a moment ago. If you're listening to this and recognize yourself in the habit of carrying things that are already over, that's okay. You don't have to throw them away right now. Just ask gently, Do I still need this for this part of the road? The answer might not come right away, but even asking the question is already a step onto the other shore. Miguel continues walking home. The familiar street, the familiar houses, windows glowing or dark in different ways, nothing new. And yet something inside him feels slightly different, as if something has been set down even though he can't quite name what it is. The bag is still on his shoulder. It hasn't disappeared, but it no longer feels like it's pulling him backward. Each step feels lighter, not because the distance has shortened, but because he's no longer carrying the repeated thoughts from the shift that just ended. There are moments when things are happening that we need to hold on tightly. We have to remember details. Think ahead, react quickly. But once those moments are over, continuing to grip them only makes us more tired. Like a boat that helped us cross a river, useful then. But once the water is behind us, it becomes nothing more than weight on our shoulders. Miguel stops at his front door. He stands there for a moment, his hand resting on the doorknob, not rushing to open it. Inside, it's quiet. No one is waiting for an explanation. No one is asking whether he did a good job today. No one needs him to think any further. He opens the door, steps inside, and closes it softly behind him. The room is dimmer than the street outside. Only a small light glows in the kitchen corner. Miguel sets the bag down on a chair this time, not keeping it close to him, just placing it there like something that has finished what it was meant to do. He washes his hands at the sink. The water runs steadily, neither hot nor cold. The sound of it covers everything else. As he washes, he notices his hands feel more tired than usual. Not from heavy work, but from gripping for too long. As he rubs in the soap, his fingers loosen on their own, little by little. A thought appears, I should have said that differently. Then another follows. But this time he doesn't chase them. He doesn't argue. He doesn't try to fix them. He simply notices them arrive and lets the sound of the water carry them away. Not because he's especially good at letting go, just because right now he doesn't need to carry them with him. Miguel dries his hands, turns off the kitchen light, and walks toward the bedroom. He doesn't turn on the main light, just enough to see where he's going. When he sits on the edge of the bed, he feels the mattress take his weight. No effort needed, no balance to maintain, nothing else required of him. Some nights, you don't need to figure out a new way to live. You just need to give yourself permission to stop carrying things that have already done their job. Old words, small mistakes, situations that have already closed. They don't vanish. But you don't have to bring them with you everywhere. Miguel lies down. He doesn't adjust the pillow over and over. He doesn't search for the perfect position. He just lies there like someone who has finished the day's walk. His breathing slows naturally. No counting, no instructions, just following his body. If you're still listening right now, still awake, that's okay. There's nothing being asked of you. You don't need to let go of everything. You don't need to set it all down at once. You only need to stop carrying more. Maybe tomorrow you'll need that boat again. You'll need to think. You'll need to be careful. And that's completely fine. But tonight, with no river in front of you, you can let it rest on the shore. Miguel closes his eyes, not to force sleep, but because his eyelids have grown heavy on their own. In the quiet room, there's nothing to solve, nothing to prove, just a day that has passed and a body that's allowed to rest. If you fall asleep at some point while listening to this story, that's perfectly natural. And if you haven't yet, you're still exactly where you need to be. Nothing is late. Nothing has gone wrong. It's just an ordinary evening, and you don't need to carry the whole day into your sleep. Listen a little longer, or fall asleep now if you'd like. Wherever you are tonight, I'm grateful you chose to spend this quiet time here. If these stories help you rest, you're welcome to subscribe and return whenever you need a gentle place to land. And now, you don't need to do anything more. Let the night hold what you can't carry. And if sleep comes, let it come.